In Tune. Conversations on audiology and balance. An Inventis podcast.
Marina, let's go back to the pediatric context for a moment. I'd like to ask you, how old are your young patients? From what age do they come to Pontoni, and when do you begin working with them?
They arrive from as young as 20 days old.
Could you tell me a little about how you approach the treatment of a pediatric patient? Are there any particular techniques you use, or any issues that regularly arise and that you have to deal with?
Treating a young child is very demanding. Earlier, I was talking about professional responsibility. If an adult cannot hear properly, they complain or get angry. If, on the other hand, a child cannot hear properly, they fail to acquire language. So treating a pediatric patient means taking on a huge responsibility, and therefore it must be done in accordance with the strictest standards possible, because we are dealing with a patient who is not cooperative. We often have an audiometric test that is incomplete. We have an objective test, the ABR, but the ABR gives us only a rough indication of their hearing threshold. We must then base the entire fitting of the hearing aids on this, the entire fitting, in close collaboration, of course, with the clinic treating this child. Because my expertise, as I said before, lies in knowing what is happening in that ear, how the patient processes everything, and the threshold on which I must base my work requires constant communication, closely linked to observation. Earlier, I mentioned that it's important for me to see when a patient lights up, because that's exactly what I look for in my pediatric patients, who aren't yet able to speak but can barely move their heads. So every little thing is a response. A flutter of the eyelashes, a pause in feeding, the start of crying. These are all responses the patient gives me to the stimulus I send them. Something really lovely happens. The first time they put the devices on, the child cries because they don't know what it is. The touch, the ear, a stranger approaching them, they start crying, and when we switch on the devices, the child stops crying.
Ah, it's wonderful.
It means that he is finally experiencing a sensation that was previously unknown to him. The child's reaction can vary. It might be pleasant or intriguing. It's particularly amusing when he starts to cry, hears his own voice for the first time, stops crying, then starts again, and you can see him beginning to develop a sense of vocal control that was previously unknown to him. So working with children, in my opinion, gives you so much energy, a great desire to improve and to learn, but precisely because it is part of the responsibility we have. I take care of the child, but I take care of their family and that child. If I don't treat them properly, they won't speak. What harm am I doing to that life? So working with children, in my opinion, must be dedicated to those who take on this responsibility.
I'll add one thing. Parents are a huge factor. They can be allies, they can be fake allies, or they can actually be enemies who won't have a word of it. So they might tell you straight out, or they might be fake allies who say yes to you, but as soon as they're out of the room, they take the devices away.
Does that really happen?
Yes, but these are just everyday conversations. We deal with so many families, but I don't point the finger at them because it's not an easy situation. They need to be aware. There needs to be a certain understanding. There needs to be dialogue. They need to find the right professional, because if they find a professional who spends 2 hours with them explaining the situation and sharing their grief, that's one thing. But if a doctor tells them in 5 minutes he's deaf, he needs to wear hearing aids, they experience it in a completely different way. These are all things we experience. So in reality, we're dealing with the parents, and that's a huge variable, in my opinion.
Of course.
In this regard, I believe the use of colored hearing aids is very important. When we manage to fit a child with colored hearing aids, in 95% of cases, we have the family on board. If we fit neutral colored hearing aids, we need to be very vigilant, as there is a risk that the family may not accept them or form a therapeutic partnership with us.
So it's very, very challenging. but it can also be incredibly rewarding.
Yes, it's not for everyone. For example, I do not take care of the children. Partly because that's just how it turned out. I had plenty of other duties, but not everyone does it. We have specific staff members who look after the children, which is only right, in my opinion.
Of course, and Marina is obviously one of them, as we mentioned at the beginning.
She's number one.
I have no doubt about that. Thank you again for your valuable contribution.